Today, I'm back again to take a closer look at some of the most interesting details in Episode 5 of Saga of Tanya the Evil, Season 2. The first major detail is Zettour's transfer. What makes this scene so frustrating is that Zettour is not being pushed aside because his analysis was wrong. It is almost the opposite. He is punished after saying out loud what the leadership does not want to hear. The Empire's strategic position is getting worse, and continuing to chase a decisive victory does not magically solve the underlying problem. That difference matters. Zettour is one of the few senior officers who consistently thinks beyond the next battle. He asks whether the Empire can sustain the war, whether its resources can support another operation, and what happens after a tactical victory. Sending someone like that toward the front may look like discipline, but from a strategic perspective, it removes one of the few people still thinking about the war as a whole. And the episode immediately shows the consequence through Rudersdorf. Rudersdorf is still capable, but without Zettour beside him, he looks noticeably more strained. Their relationship has always worked because they compensate for each other. Rudersdorf represents drive, aggression, and the desire to force a result. Zettour is the colder voice, asking whether the result is actually affordable. Take away that second voice, and the command structure becomes much more vulnerable to wishful thinking. This is also why Tanya's reaction is so strong. She is not only shocked because an officer she respects has been transferred. Zettour was one of the very few people at headquarters who understood how Tanya thinks. From Tanya's point of view, losing Zettour means losing one of the only senior officers capable of recognizing a bad order before it reaches her. And that is the irony of the entire scene. The Empire removes one of its most realistic strategists at exactly the moment when reality is becoming impossible to ignore. The second interesting detail is how quickly Tanya tears apart the proposed defensive plan. On paper, Zettour's concept has logic behind it. Absorb the enemy's pressure, preserve enough mobility to respond, and create an opportunity for a counterattack. The problem is that the Empire no longer has the resources to execute the clean version of that idea. Tanya immediately focuses on force density. The defensive line is simply being stretched too far. When troops are spread across too much territory, every individual position becomes weaker, reserves become harder to move, and a local breakthrough can create problems far beyond a single sector. What makes Tanya's reaction important is that she is not rejecting defensive warfare itself. She is questioning whether the Empire still possesses enough men, ammunition, transport, and fresh units to make the plan work the way headquarters imagines. That is a recurring theme in Season 2. The Empire's officers can still design sophisticated operations. Its soldiers can still fight extremely well. But strategy stops mattering if the resources required to execute it no longer exist. Tanya understands this because she lives at the point where staff room theory collides with battlefield reality. To headquarters, a line on a map can be extended. To Tanya, extending that line means real units covering more ground with less support. And that is why this scene is more than Tanya complaining again. It shows the widening gap between what Imperial Command wants to do and what the Imperial Army is physically capable of doing. The Empire is not running out of intelligence, it is running out of margin for error. The third detail is easy to miss because the ending immediately steals all the attention. Tanya's unit is operating with noticeably better coordination than before. They are no longer just following Tanya's orders one step at a time. The veterans understand her tempo, anticipate each other's movement, and react as a team with far less hesitation. That development is important because Youjo Senki has spent a long time showing Tanya trying to create a unit that functions rationally under pressure. By Episode 5, we can finally see the result. And then the episode uses that progress against the audience. During the attack on the enemy artillery position, Weiss is hit around the neck area, and the episode cuts away before giving us a clear answer about his condition. The scene works because Vice is not a random soldier. He is one of Tanya's most dependable officers and a major part of the battalion's internal stability. When Tanya is forced to focus on the larger battle, Vice is exactly the kind of subordinate who keeps the unit functioning. So the cliffhanger threatens more than one character. If Vice is removed from action, even temporarily, Tanya loses experience, leadership, and one of the people most capable of translating her commands into action for the rest of the battalion. It also reinforces the episode's central idea. The Empire can create excellent soldiers, but a long war slowly consumes exactly those people. That is why the final shot feels so uncomfortable. For most of the episode, the problem is discussed through maps, meetings, and shortages. With Vice, the cost suddenly becomes personal. The final detail is Loria. His appearance is brief, but his objective adds another layer of danger around Tanya. Loria does not appear to want Tanya simply eliminated on the battlefield. He wants her captured and publicly dealt with instead. From a propaganda perspective, the logic is easy to understand. If Tanya falls in battle, the Empire can turn her into a symbol, a decorated young officer who sacrificed herself for the nation. A martyr can strengthen morale. Put Tanya on trial, display her as proof of imperial wrongdoing, and suddenly the enemy gains a political weapon rather than simply removing a military one. Of course, with Loria, there is also a deeply personal obsession involved, which makes his interest in capturing Tanya even more disturbing. But from the story's point of view, this creates an interesting contrast. The imperial leadership sees Tanya as a useful piece to throw into an increasingly desperate operation. Loria sees her as a prize that must be taken alive.